Hello, everyone. Welcome this evening. It's just so glad to have you, just so wonderful to have you here. You're coming from all over the world. I just love it when you put your flag in the chat, so please don't hesitate to do that. I also, if you're part of Karen's Quilt Crew, don't forget to use those emojis so I know who you are. So here we are. I think this is our fourth. This is our fifth, I think, get together with Angie. And I hope you've been working on your um, kinship fusion quilts, and you're making your progress down. We've loved seeing all your photographs online, on Instagram, on Facebook. It's just been lovely. And I'm just going to invite Angie on now. Hello there. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm good. Thank you. The future is fine.
A little wet, I hear.
Yep. It's damp, both inside the house and out. I just spilt a massive glass of water all over my desk, my pants, my chair, the floor. You know, classy lady.
I'm looking at these wonderful people from all over the world. I see John from Art East Quilting Company. He's here with us. He's always here. I see so many members from the crew. Thank you so much. A couple of people from the UK. You've stayed up late just to be here, so that's great. Um, so, what is going on in your life right now, Angie? Are you busy finishing up your kinship, or are you done?
I have popped my kinship blocks away because I find personally when 100 days is finished, because it's such a big thing from this end, because I'm organising it and all of that sort of stuff, and I'm in it all the time, that towards the end, I pop the blocks away and have a bit of a mental break before I put them together, because I find when I get back to it, that not having them in my face all the time helps me see them a little bit differently again. So I was thinking about it yesterday because I knew today was coming and I was going to feel the pressure that I didn't have it done. But I'll release it, I'll release it into the wild and show everybody what I've done a month or so before the next one kicks off next year. Because I wouldn't mind releasing a different layout based on this one. So I'm kind of brewing something. So yes, so I've not done anything, which I feel terrible about, sort of, somewhat. Because I know people are hanging out to see the nautical ones all come together. But on the other hand, I'm like, genius takes time.
Oh,
Can't argue with that truth.
well, I hate to say it, but I haven't been in my sewing room for a good 2 weeks. Uh, Mando with his broken leg. I think I've been telling a couple of people I have never spent so much time looking after something. I raised 4 children and I've never had a situation like this. I live with my husband and my youngest son, and we are on, somebody has to be on 24/7 just to keep him out of trouble, just to stop
Yeah.
him from hurting himself or hurting someone else, because he's begun to learn to use his casted leg like a hockey stick.
Oh, that's classy.
It's very
Um,
classy.
you should you should get him on the ice. See if he'll try out for one of the Canadian ice hockey teams.
Uh, yes, I'm sure the Toronto Maple Leafs could use him. That's an inside joke here with everybody in Canada, but we're always the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't won a cup in so many years. I think since I was 5.
I should be wearing my Maple Leafs jersey. Um, yes, yeah, that's not good because puppies. It's not like you can talk to them.
No,
It's not
no,
like
that's the
that.
problem. You know, my son
Yeah,
broke his leg, but he could articulate what he wanted and what he needed. And when you said, time to be quiet, he could listen.
yeah. He wouldn't necessarily do it, but he'd listen. Yeah, I don't envy you that at all. But hopefully the time will go fast. And 2 weeks out of the sewing room, given that it's your job, that's not massive amount of time because you need a refresher. You need to have a break. You need to recharge. You need,
But I
you
also
can't.
use quilting to recharge, so just not getting that creative bit in my day. But I've only got
Yep.
3 more weeks and 5 days of this.
Not that you're counting.
I'm trying not to count the hours. Truly trying not to count the hours.
I feel your pain.
So we have just one question so far from Joyce Fuller, and she has said that she's new to quilting. Just curious, do all of you square up your quilt tops before you make the sandwich or after? You square them up after. It's a good idea to trim the excess binding so that you're only working with a narrow edge, because that can get caught under things and things like that. But just do a very rough trimming before the quilt sandwich, and then square up afterwards. And then even then, when you're squaring up, we are not necessarily talking right angles. Just do your best. I call it a negotiation. It depends on how you've quilted it.
Yep. And I can't even add comment there because I send all mine out to be quilted by somebody else, and that's their job to worry about.
Which is kind of a lead in here, because we have a special guest today. We have Rayleigh. Maybe you can introduce Rayleigh. Angie?
This lady needs no introduction. A multi-award-winning quilter. She's a long arm quilter. She is the yin to my yang. Yes, she is Rayleigh Bielenberg of Sunflower Stitcheries and Quilting. She, yeah, I don't know what to say. She's everything. So yes, I don't know. Was that sufficient?
Good morning,
was that a good enough intro, Rayleigh?
Thank you. That sounded wonderful. I like being the yin, I think.
So we are 3 today. And we're just trying to get ourselves lined up so that you can see all of us. Rayleigh, you're perfect. Angie, you're perfect. And Rayleigh, we've talked a lot about you because you have quilted a lot of these fusion quilt tops of Angie's, haven't you? You've quilted all of hers and probably a couple more.
All of them. Yes.
Do you have any advice for somebody who is just starting with their sampler quilt? Like, what ideas?
Well, it depends on whether they have the desire to complete the entire quilt themselves. So one of the roles as a long arm quilter is that not everybody is interested in the quilting side of things, but then you have the people who they want to do the entire project themselves. So yeah, I'm happy to encourage any of those people. If you are starting out quilting your own quilt, start with something simple. I guess you have the basics. You need to stabilize your quilt. You need to have it held down, whether that's pin basting or spray basting, so that you don't get pleats and puckers and all that sort of stuff. If you are wanting to get really creative with your quilting designs, then work out what you want to do. In my tutorials, I talk a lot about your quilt path or the quilting path, so that we don't like starting and stopping. They're the things that we try and avoid. A thread break is a weak point in your quilt, so or in the quilting part of it. So we try and avoid the starts and stops. And so how can we get around a block without stopping? So I talk about the quilt path, and that's something that you need to consider with any quilting. So I guess work out what you want to do with your quilt, how densely you want to quilt it, or how detailed. Some of them don't need a lot of quilting, because you've got, if you've got feature fabric, and there are so many beautiful fabrics out there, sometimes the quilting just needs to be really simple.
Right.
Sorry, that was a big answer to a small question. Sorry.
But good advice. Keep it simple when your design is busy. Busy.
Yeah, knowing what your quilt needs is part of the equation.
Right.
Sorry, I'll stop talking now.
No, not at all. So, Angie, what do you think? Any advice from your point of view? Um, you've seen a lot of quilts go by.
Yeah. I guess my thing, and it's really what I've learnt from the years of working with Ray Lee, is that it is a skill that you have to develop, and it requires patience and practice, the two P's. And I think that learning learning what design complements the fabric and pattern choices is really key to having a all over cohesive quilt. So if you go to a long armor, so I'll talk about it from my point of view. I send all of mine to Ray Lee. I don't have the skill or the patience to teach myself how to quilt on my domestic machine, because there's just too many fabrics and patchwork blocks to play with, and I'd rather do that. So when I take my quilt to her, it's always a conversation between the two of us, because I'm paying for her skill set. So I like to go into it as a conversation between the two of us. It's a joint project. And a lot of times I'll defer to her expertise and her opinion on things. Sometimes I know exactly what I want, and she tries to talk me out of it, because it usually involves a lot of ruler work. I'm very, very wedded to ruler work because I don't have to do it. But if you're a fussy cutter like me, then a lot of times the thing that we talk about with the quilting is what's going to, I want to say, enhance or complement the fussy cut placement. So a lot of times it's not, we very rarely use a variegated thread because it'll compete. We very rarely use a thread that dominates the piece. A lot of times it is just about what complements it and what's going to give it a texture. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where, this will sound really funny, but I really love quilting. And so I love looking at people's quilts. I love reading about quilts. I love going to quilt shows. I love losing myself online, looking at other people's quilting, both modern and contemporary and historical. And so I think if you spend enough time and really pay attention to what people are doing, why you love something, why you don't love something, that'll make the job a lot easier. Which is another really long answer to a very short question. But yes.
Okay. So, Ray Lee, how did you get into long arming? Like,
when you collect a group of, or a number of quilts, and they need to be finished, and you're looking for a job that doesn't take you outside the home, because like you, I have 4 children, all boys, and they, it's nice to be around to do stuff. So I bought a short arm machine quite a number of years ago, and that didn't quite do exactly what I wanted. So we looked into a long arm, and so I started my business in probably August of 2009, after I got my machine in June of 2008, sorry. No, 2009 was 2009. So yeah, and so I've been working through, Mum and we amassed a number of quilt tops that needed finishing, and I'm almost there with those. It has taken a while. But yeah, and I've been very blessed with clients that have trusted me with their creations, and when I've been pushed to grow my skill set, It's been at the right time, so that's been fantastic. And it's been a lot of fun being part of finishing all these quilts over the years that I would never get to make if I was making the quilt tops. So I get to, it's a bit of voyeurism, maybe. I get to live through their quilts, and I get to have fun on, quilts such as the ones that Angie makes. They're always a lot of fun, even with all the ruler work.
All the ruler work. Well, I've got a question for you from Mama Koala. She said, I loved Rayleigh's quilt tutorials. Does she have one to show how to join the blocks together after quilting them?
It's in progress. It's the end of the year, and so there's lots of just getting everybody's quilts done, client quilts done before Christmas. So yes, that was always part of the plan. It just got delayed slightly, so I'm very sorry about that. It is coming. I do want to do that so that you know how to join it together, because and it's a bit of a process for me because I normally do something on the long arm, so it's a whole quilt top. So it's actually been a lot of fun for me as well to do this quilt as you go type arrangement. And so I want to do one where we join them all together. Excellent. So yes, it's coming. Short answer.
I have another one from Shirley Monkhouse, who's asked, so long ago when she did her last quilt on her home machine, the rule was not to cross over any other lines. What happened to that rule? I remember that. I wasn't actually a quilter at the time, but there was this school of thought that you quilted that was right when the stipple was around. Like you weren't supposed to cross the line over.
That was the golden rule with stippling, wasn't it? I think that went the way of the quilt police. So rule of thumb, it's your quilt. Do what you like.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any weaker to cross your threads.
No, not at all. Not at all. Hello. There's there are so many times where there's thread play and thread build up happening and they cross and that's I don't know what happened to that rule, but I'm glad it's gone. We have so much fun creating texture with thread and all that now. Just have a ball.
I'm going to bring Angie back here. Angie, I've got a question here from Lynn So Imperfect. As a first-time quilter, what basting method would you recommend for a table runner for her domestic sewing machine?
Don't ask me the basting question.
Okay, so I will take this one. As a first-time quilter, I would use a spray baste because I think that's going to give you, if you're doing it on your domestic sewing machine and you're a first-time quilter, I would go with a spray base.
And spray based outside.
And spray based outside. What I would do is I would spray my layers outside and then bring them in and do them on my table. Now, I do have a video called 6 Ways to Keep Your Quilt Sandwich Together. And I would recommend you take a look at that because there's more than one choice. It's kind of a choose your own adventure and you can make a choice over which way you need to go based on your needs. And Liza Gervais, hello Liza, glad to have you here. How do I get over my fear anxiety of cutting the borders to get them on and get my quilt finished?
Just do it. I always cut, if it's an outside border, and say the pattern says that you cut a 2.5 inch strip. When I was first starting, I'd always cut it at 3 inches and attach it at 3 inches. So I'd give like an extra 1/2 inch in the cutting. Does that make sense? Because then when it was quilted and finished and you were ready to square it up to put the binding on it, it gave you a little bit of room to make it square and still stick to the pattern. Does that make sense? So if you're asking about cutting strips and joining them, make sure, and from memory, Karen's got a really good video on how to cut straight. Make sure you've cut them straight and join them up and then just attach them. It's mentally, I always think about it as it's just a giant quilt block. You're just adding a border to a giant quilt block on a giant scale. And I always sew up one way if I'm attaching a border and down the other way. So you alternate the direction of your stitches, because I heard that helps alleviate wonk, like ripple. So if you go up on the left, come down on the right. If you go right to left on the top, go left to right on the bottom. Does that make sense? So yes, I hope that helps. Is it Lisa?
It's Lisa. I apologize, Lisa. I said I read things literally. I have a very hard time translating that before my mouth says it. But Lisa. Now, if you're putting on your big borders, it's actually really important that you measure and cut accurately on those too. Like if you're talking about borders around the outside of your quilt, if you just kind of leave it floppy, like, okay, so here's the side of your border, the side of your quilt top, and let's say it's 20 inches, and then your strip is 22 inches. You can end up with a lot of excess border in your quilt, and Rayleigh, I'll bring you back in here because you can you can talk about the difficulty of quilting floppy borders.
Friendly
From
borders, we call
experience.
them. Friendly borders, the ones that wave at you. It's problematic because you end up with potentially pleats or puckers, and your fabric can push in two different directions when you're quilting. So it's really nice to have nice flat borders. So it's often something I will point out to a client when they bring a quilt, say, there could be some problems with the border here. The opposite is just as bad if you have your borders too tight, which means you end up with a bit of a pillow effect in the center. So getting that measuring and applying your borders is a good step to learn well. So there are ways that we can mitigate some of the friendliness of the border, but it's best if we don't have to.
And I honestly wouldn't worry about it too much if this is your first quilt. It's just a beginner thing, and it's something that you evolve and you get better and better at with every single quilt.
Absolutely.
It is Larry's birthday here, so we're all going to say happy birthday to Larry. Welcome.
Happy birthday, Larry! I'll have some
birthday,
cake
Larry.
for you later today.
So Angie says it's going to be a great day. Now, somebody has asked me, how old is Mando? Mando is 9 months old. So can you imagine? Well, I've told you how difficult it is trying to keep a dog who's in his prime still. And we're adding the complication that because he broke his leg, he is missing his vasectomy. So now I've also got to keep him away from all the girl dogs for the next 2 months until we can get it rescheduled in January. So life is interesting. I have enough boys in my life. I could use a couple of girl problems. So let's start taking a look at some of the quilts this week. We've had a lot of beautiful finishes, and I'm just going to go down them, Angie, one by one. Now, Rayleigh, before you go, you're welcome to comment on anything. Just jump in there. But let's just talk about your course that you've got. You mentioned it very briefly. I'm just going to throw it up on the screen. Let's just...
Talking about our finishing school?
Yeah, your finishing school.
Right. So this is aimed at beginners or intermediate. So this is a series of tutorials that will take you from quilt blocks to a completed quilt. So all the different steps that you need to consider, and all the hints and tips that I can share on how to get from quilt blocks to a completed quilt. So there'll be short tutorials giving you as much information as I can from working out sashing, working out sizing, putting it on, whether you've got a setting square or not, whether you're doing it on point or not, all those sorts of things, attaching borders, things like that, just so that we have a gorgeous flat quilt top. And then we'll talk about quilting, which is one of my favorite subjects, and all the way through to binding, because I know for some people that's a real sticking point. They hate binding, and it's really not that hard, but there are some hints that can make it a bit easier for you. So just, it's been one of the things that has been bubbling away in the back of my mind for a while, and now got the good opportunity to do that. So,
and where do we find it?
There's a sign up. I will put stuff on my YouTube as well, but there is a sign up on our website. So that's sunflowerstitcheries.com, and you can sign up to the newsletter. You'll find out more about it there as well. And so that will be starting in January.
Okay. Thank you. So let's start with our first one. We are talking about, this is a thread direction. Angie, I think you chose this one. Is it the thread lexicon?
Yep, sorry. I was having a brain freeze then. I'm still thinking about how wet my pants are. Yes. So this one's a really good example of an unusual color palette. So I really like the progression. It's a rainbow, but
the colors are all just slightly desaturated. It's not a red, it's a coral.
It's dirty.
And yeah.
Now it could be a filter on the photo as well, because sometimes if you've used an Instagram filter, because I know some of those prints are Chula Pink prints, and I don't think they're that desaturated in person.
Okay.
But yeah, I like, this is a really good example of how to do a different play on color blocking.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, the next one is by Quiltit. Now, this is an interesting one. This is a Halloween one.
Yeah, it's another really good example of someone's done their own layout, but they've used that big skeleton panel in it as well, and then through the use of focal sashing, I'm just making that term up. So those black boxes around things really draws your eye to that as well, and plays off the scale of the panel. So yeah, I really liked this one because it was an unusual. I mean, it's Halloween. You either love Halloween prints or you don't, and it's a really interesting mix of colors and graphic interest. Plus, skeletons are always cool.
Now, I love this one. I'm not really fond of red and white quilts, but Summer Full Farmin.
Yep, so Summer, I'm pretty sure Summer's done the plaid version of the pattern layout, which is included in the pattern. So I really liked that Summer used like a white... There's blocks in those white strips, right? So you're not... They don't necessarily read as being blocks, as the first thing you think about is those strips. So I thought this was a really interesting play on that layout option, and a little bit of forward planning, because Summer would have had to work out which blocks, because the plaid requires a couple of the rectangle blocks to be joined together to make squares. So she would have had to be planning which blocks she was going to use where, which I really liked. Plus, I'm a real fan of red and pink together.
Yeah, like it's so fresh. It's so fresh.
Yep. And it reads like it could be a Valentine's Day quilt or a Christmas quilt. Like it's one of those quilts that you could have in your home at various times of the year and it wouldn't seem out of place.
Yeah.
Whereas some quilts, like a Halloween specific quilt, you know, you could run the risk of it being out of season. But I mean, you know,
So a couple of
each
people
to
think that those are wide white strips, but they're not. Let me just see if I can
no.
make this photograph a little bit bigger here. I'm just going to manipulate it here so maybe you can see how. There's so many controls on my screen. If you can see, I'm not sure if that reads any bigger, but you can see that all those white strips are actually piece blocks. There is a little bit of sashing in between them, but they're blocks made out of very white fabric. Just beautiful.
Yeah, it's
really well
white
done.
and cream. Yeah.
Yeah. Really well done. So let's go for the next one. This one's by Crafty Maine Mom.
Yep. So this is the plaid layout, but she's extended it, which you're more than welcome to do, obviously. So this is the same quilt pattern layout option as the red and white one, but it's done in blues and navies with the white, and I really like it as well. And I think it's another. I mean, they're the same pattern. So to
They're
be
the
able
same
to,
pattern, but it looks like there's almost secondary designs appearing here with the gray
yeah,
stripes versus the dark stripes. And you know, she's got beautiful play here.
yes, and I think it's the is it a tartan? Tartan's different to a plaid, and I think this is kind of bordering on the tartan, a tartan version of the plaid layout. If that makes sense, that's a lot. Yeah.
When is a plaid a tartan?
I don't know. I think that would probably be a YouTube thing all on its own. But yes.
Now the next one is the purple quilt by Jennifer Ibo and or Elbow. Is it Elbow? God,
No,
I'm
I think it's
sorry.
Ivo.
My
Yeah.
eyes are so bad tonight. But I remember when I first saw this, when there was just this huge.
Yeah. I really like purple, and so and I know purple's a divisive color, but I really love this, and I love that it's got little pops of blue in it. Um, but yeah, and it's a really, this is the cover quilt layout, and she's done them somewhat in order, but yeah, it's lovely,
It
and she
is.
kind of gradiates outward from the middle her block levels of how much color is in the blocks.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, yeah, but it's just lovely.
Now this one is so different from the typical Kinship fusion. You know, you think of
I
all
know.
those bright reds and pinks and purples and everything, and this is so different, so unique, and so special. We saw the blocks as they were going by. They were just so amazing, and she's done such a great job.
Yeah, and this is her second one too. Because I think she did two this year. Um, and it's using the Ghastlies range from Alexander Henry. So we know how much of a fan we are of Alexander Henry
Yeah.
prints. It's another good example of weaving in a panel print as well. So she's, where there's, I want to say, a lack of blocks, she's used panels to fill that space. So that's a really good tip for if you want to make a quilt bigger, but you don't necessarily want to make more blocks, is you can put in a square or rectangle of your favorite prints and space it out that way.
Yeah.
I really love the staggered approach to the framing of the sashing.
Yes.
It's a really busy quilt, but it doesn't read as really busy.
I think it'll be
And
fascinating up close. I think it's going to be like an
yeah,
I Spy quilt. It's just going to be one of these things that has so many layers to it.
and I really love that she's chosen the colors that are in those panel pieces and played on them, and like the addition of the mustard. I'm a sucker for pink at the best of times, but I will deny it to my dying days. But the pink with the olive green is a really nice touch as well. and that sort of grey, bluey, greeny colour. Yeah, I could look at this one for ages.
Okay, so next one. This one's by and Hillbilling Quilts.
So this is a really good one for a use of a textured border. Another way of providing interest. And so I often use textured print. So when I say textured print, it's like a tone on tone. So it's a print that has one color, but there's like a lighter bit of the color in there and a dark bit of the color. They're often ditzy prints, which means that they have no top or bottom, like there's no direction in it. This I'm suspecting is Grunge by Moda, just texture pattern on it, but it gives a lot of interest to it, and it makes it, if you're not a fan of solids, and I know solids can be quite separating with people, this is a great way to get a solid feel without solids. This quilt is all Anna Maria Horner prints as well, so she's playing with large scale florals, which these blocks were built for. So it's beautiful.
It is. It is. I honestly would not have recognized those as Anna Marie Horner's, except for that big flower in the middle. And then I went, oh, right.
Yeah.
And then I realized
I think
I could
she's
see
got a
the other
little bit
one.
of conservatory in there as well. Like there are some prints that aren't from AMH. So I wonder whether she's used them from her conservatory line. But
Did you see how
generally,
she made her heart?
uh,
She put it in a heart in a block.
oh yeah.
A little bit different.
I know, and that's what I love about this. Every year, people just put their own spin on the blocks and the quilts and the layouts, and as the person who helped design these blocks and everything, I love that people feel the freedom to do that and the confidence to do that. So yes, it's always exciting.
Now we've got a model in this one. This is
Yeah.
Dragon Gale.
So, if I'm correct, and the only time I say I'm never correct, I'm never wrong is to my husband, but I think this is a grandmother and granddaughter that work together, and this is her first quilt. So, which I love because the pattern was written for beginners in mind. And quite frankly, you'd think she'd been quilting for years based on
Gorgeous.
it. So, and I really love that she's gone, like, again, purple with a hint of aqua and redsy pinks. So, yeah, and I love it when there's a model in the photo. So, yeah.
I hope she
I bet
knows that there's normally a junior category at most quilt shows. She should enter it when she gets done.
Yes. Yes, that would be a good.
Yeah. Get her hooked
Oftentimes,
early.
yeah. She'll never have a drug problem because she'll be broke from paying for fabric. And a lot of times the prizes in the junior categories are sewing machines, which is a great way for a kid to get a really good sewing machine.
Yeah. Here we have Jody's Craft Room. Now I like this. I'm surprised there's no borders here and how nicely that works.
Yes. So this is the kitchen sink layout option done in a rainbow wash. And it's all solids, which is a great example of the fact that this quilt works for both prints and solids. And I love it. Is Rayleigh still here?
Yep, she's still here. Let's bring her on.
Yeah. Sorry. Because this is a really good example of where the quilting would be the feature or could be the feature over the prints. Does that make sense?
Yep.
This one would be lovely to get my hands on.
We can road trip and go knock it off.
Now, I just want to show you, like, this one has the dark colors going down the middle, where when we did number 1, that one had the lighter colors going through the middle. So just a different effect depending on where you put the dark and light values.
Yeah.
And this one's a finished one, Rayleigh. This is Jessie Berkeley.
I just have to wait for it to come up on my screen.
Has a little
Yeah,
bit
so
of
Jessie's done. I'll talk while Rayleigh waits for the delay. Jessie's used her rectangle blocks for the outside border, which I think was a genius idea.
it
And
is.
I'm knocking
I'm
it
just
off for
realizing
next
that
year.
it's almost, well, it's not piano key, but it sort of gives a vibe of a piano key,
Yeah.
but better.
Yeah. So, and again, Jessie's just had the confidence to do this herself, which I really love. Those square blocks will give you a square middle, and then you just have to work out the math for the border. But I'm going to reach out to Jessie and see if I can have this as a option for next year for people so that they don't have to do the math, because it's just so cute.
Yeah. And is this all 100 or is this a smaller amount?
I actually think it's all 100.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I love this one. I think the caption says, "Who knew that photographing in the wild is so hard?"
Yeah, I don't advocate risking your life to get a quilt photo, and I can in my head hear my husband going, "Don't stand on the car." But I just loved their commitment to the cause. So and plus it's a stunning quilt. But yeah, I thought that was cute. And I
There's
think
so
this
many
is
people
from
that go out and get these stunning
Ooh.
pictures of quilts in the wild, and I think I've tried it about 3 times, and it's just been such a failure on a capital scale. You know,
yeah.
you're
It
doing
only
everything
works.
not to get the quilt in the mud or the rain or the animals on top of it.
It only works if
Yeah.
you've got someone to hold it up for you as well.
Yeah.
We've spent many a time together trying to get a good shot out in the wind.
And here we have Callistra. Beautiful black borders on a nice analogous color scheme here. Blues, purples, and greens.
I love this because it's a little bit like yours, in the sense that when you started yours, you were like, "Oh, lime green is not a color I would normally do, but it gives a really good pop." They've used a similar principle, but with a different version of green, basically. But it's got that I don't know how to say this without it sounding weird, but from my fussy cutting core, the fact that all those stripes run in the same direction across the entire quilt just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So she's got the stripes in the same direction, and then there's like a vine trellis repeat pattern as well, and all the stripes run the same. Like it just, yeah. Anyway, that
I
was
think
my
this is
little.
one of those quilts as well. When you get up close, it just takes on a whole new life.
Yep.
Now, this is stunning. I think, did we have this one last time? We might have had this
I
one
was
last
just
time.
thinking that.
This Goodwood Quilts. Now, I think we did talk
Yeah.
about this one because this one had that interesting border on it.
Yeah, so I think this is based on the 50 block layout download that we can get. Sorry, I should say I've got a download section where you can download alternative layouts for kinship blocks, and I think this is the 50 block one, but done with 51 blocks. Anyway, yeah, I like that she's off-centered it, and it's asymmetrical. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
But yes. So it's another good example of if you want to make your quilt a little bit bigger, but you don't want to have to make blocks, think creatively about your borders.
Right?
Yeah.
And, oh, look at this one. This is from Lang 6. That is so busy, it doesn't look busy.
No, and I like, again, that it's a color wash. And it just, I'm a sucker for blues in the worst way. And this just made me think of the ocean. You know, when the wave comes in and then recedes back and you get the different colors. But yeah.
I like, she also seems to have used up her scraps on the side to make one piano border on both sides, or or coin blocks.
Yep, sorry, I was looking at a different one. Yes, you're probably all going, why is she talking about blues? Yes, I was looking at a different quilt. So to answer Lynn's question, have I had caffeine yet today? No. I don't actually drink coffee. So could you imagine this with more? Yes, this is lovely with the rectangles on the side. But I think that's just scraps. That's not blocks. That's just,
Yes,
yeah.
I think those are leftovers. I think she's done something smart and used up all her pieces to make her
Yeah.
quilt just a little bit wider.
It's a good way to use up the scraps and make, if you're keeping all of the 4x8 blocks vertical, this is a good way to make the quilt wider.
Right.
Square.
Otherwise you end up with a, yeah, more square.
Yeah.
Now I have one. This is by Amira Little Mushroom Cap, and Amira is actually going to be on Karen's Quilt Circle next week. Now she is in Malaysia, and you would think that these blocks would be way too busy altogether. And she's just given that little bit of, what do they call that? Fairy dust, that fabric?
Yes. Yep. So
That
that's
little bit of fairy dust in between just gives a little bit of break between the
cohesion.
patterns, and it all comes together. It's just stunning.
Yeah, so she's used Chula Pink and Chula Pink. So Chula Pink prints, and I think it's the All Stars range of prints, combined with her circus tent stripes and her pom pom dots with the fairy dust in the middle. And that sounds like I might be a bit of a Chula Pink addict, and I might be. But yes, so this is a really good example of she's used one designer, and so the cohesiveness of that, because a good designer will make all of their collections work together, so you can pick and choose and be confident that those fabrics will play together really well, and that's what Amira's worked with here with this collection. The stripes give it interest and movement. The dots are a fun thing. It's just, I can't wait to hear her on YouTube later.
Oh, she is. I had so much fun interviewing her. She's just a very enthusiastic quilter and she got her start in Australia.
Yes,
Did you know her when she was there?
Yes. Yeah. I delivered fabric to her once. That's how I meet most people. But yes, we used to claim her as our own, and now she's gone back to Malaysia. But we'll still claim her.
Yeah. So I have one last one, and this is by Gladys. What's her name? Sorry, just has slipped my name. Gladys. Apologies, Gladys. I'm just looking up your name here. I had it a second ago. Gladys Birdwell. I was going to say Birdwell, but I just didn't want to mess it up. And she has done something similar in that she's put her scraps all around the outside border. And that is just a fabulous job. Really nice.
Yeah, and it harks back to traditional quilting as well,
Yeah.
which I really like. You just, again, it's another example of really the quilts are yours to do with as you want. There's no right or wrong. It's just what makes you happy.
Yeah. So, oh boy. So let's talk about what is next on the horizon for you. So Rayleigh, we heard about your course. Do you have a project that you're working on together, or?
The finishing school project is going to be the first version of our Free Block Friday quilt. So basically, by the time the Free Block Friday first round quilt sampler finishes, I will hand you off to Rayleigh, and Rayleigh will show you how to make that quilt finished. So that's been exciting because there's a bit of planning involved in that, and then working through how, like, where I stop, because I don't do any of the quilting stuff, and where Rayleigh will pick up, and how we make sure that people are confident moving between the two teachers, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that's really exciting.
Okay, Rayleigh, does she remove any of the threads for you?
Angie is very good at not having excess threads on the front of her quilt, which is a big plus. Yeah, we do things slightly differently. I'm more in the camp of not pinning, so I'm with you on that one. Angie is a pinner, but we get it done. So yeah, all Angie's quilts come very neat and ready to be quilted. So she's a very good piecer, and has improved. So yeah, I don't have any issues with her quilts.
So how did you say that she's improved? How have you noticed her improvements with the quilts? Like, how do you see it? Like, I'm always telling people that, this is a learning curve, and, your first quilt, you learn with every single quilt. How have you seen her changes?
I think it's with confidence, as putting it all together and just knowing what her style is. Not really her style. She's always had her own style. Putting it together so that this is how it's going to go together. So, I'm a press to one side. Angie presses open when needs be, or depending on whether we've discussed quilting beforehand, she will press to one side because we want to have that stitch in the ditch capability. But I'm sort of not really answering the question, am I? I think it's just, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how to answer the question. All her quilts are flat. So obviously her piecing, her seam allowances are on point. There's no issues with her borders, so she's measuring correctly. And so therefore you end up with a quilt top, because if you have a mistake with seam allowance on a block that has, 16 pieces in it, then you're going to have an issue with that block. If you multiply that by 100 blocks, you're going to have an issue with a not flat quilt top. And then if you don't add your borders properly, you're going to have a friendly quilt. And so it's going to be all wavy and it's just not going to sit flat. So to get the best result, it starts way back at the piecing. So that's, I guess, where we all learn to improve, to keep our seam allowances consistent, whether you use a quarter-inch foot with a gate or not, or however you do it, you just have that consistency, and that turns out a much better quilt top.
And you get
I
better
think
with every single quilt.
Yeah, you do. And it's been years since we've had to use extra wadding to take up pillowing in a quilt top that I've done. Because one of my very early ones, I did a New York Beauty quilt, and I think you ended up using 3 layers of wadding in the middle to try and take up the pillowing.
Yes.
So that really, if I can answer that question, there's a couple of things that have changed for me. I think about the quilting when I never used to back at the start. So a lot of times when I go into it, have an idea of what we're going to do. The other thing is Rayleigh has taught me some things that have come in handy for getting it to a long armor, like stitching around the ends, around the outside if there's lots of pieces.
Stitching.
Yeah, that's the word. And because Rayleigh's quilted my farmer's wife quilts were like my 4th or 5th quilts that I'd ever done. And the difference just in the accuracy between those quilts and the quilts that I'm doing now. And one day I've got the first flying geese blocks I ever made, and I'm going to share photos of them because they're just horrific. Horrific. And it's just practice. It's practice, and being observant of what others are doing, and not, I know this will sound really weird, but there is no right or wrong way for some things. So obviously the seam allowance has to be a 1/4 of an inch, but how you get that 1/4 of an inch can be done multiple ways. So you just have to experiment and practice and then find what works for you, and never go into a situation where you go, well, I know what's best. I know what, and try and convert someone to your way, because it's such an individual craft. But yeah, anyway, I'll just get
Corrine
off.
has asked Raylene, is the finishing class, the sign up coming, or do you just sign up for your newsletter and they'll get notified?
It is actually on the website as a separate sign up page. So I think I've given that to you, but I will be chatting about that in on my social media and YouTube as well in the next.
And I'll put it in
couple
mine
days.
too.
Okay, so
So
Corrine, just follow Raylene online and you'll see it coming up. She'll send you the links.
yep.
And Angie, what's next? Now that you're done with 100 days, 100 blocks, what's next on your docket?
So we have another 100 block project starting on the 1st of February for this quilt. Which is Make the Cut. It's another 100 block sampler. I know this doesn't look like a sampler, but these are 6-inch blocks put together in a specific way so that you get this scissor pattern if you want. So that's coming. We're going to start really promoting that in December. The pattern's currently on sale on my website, so you can go and grab it. We've just, very excited, had this printed as a hard copy because we only had it as PDF previously. So if you want a hard copy, it's coming. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. So if you like 100-day project, come join us in February. Otherwise, stick around, because 1st of July 2022, can you believe it already, is going to be the next 100 days, 100 blocks, and it's using the Kinship pattern, and it'll be the last year that we use the Kinship pattern. So if you want to make it, come on board. If not, I should say too, if you don't want to make the scissor version of this, there's a version where it's a traditional on point with sashing and cornerstones and as well, and I'll have examples of that too. So yes, I'm very excited about making this one. It's been in the works for a long time. So yes, come with me and make some skizzers.
Well, thank you very much. This has been so fun getting together with you on a monthly basis. I'm going to miss it. Just catching up and having fun, and all our friends get to show up from all over the world to talk to us about quilting with us, and all those amazing quilts. I hope everyone is so proud of themselves and what they've done, because they truly have pushed themselves and have improved, and I hope you take it forward into your next project.
Yes, and thank you everyone for coming on the journey. Thank you, Karen, for hosting us and for encouraging and for participating and for your support. It's been amazing. And I'm going to miss you guys.
We'll still have to get together for a coffee. Now, if you missed the original interview where this all started, you can catch it on my website. It was called Let's Talk About Quilt-alongs with Gnome Angel. And last week I put out my video 10 gifts for quilters. So if you're looking for a present for someone that knows you to get you, that's fairly stress-free, you can just hand them a shopping list with the links on it. Go watch that. And then the week before, if you ever have found a hole in your quilt, I have done 5 repairs for various holes that you find. And of course, last week I had Erin Suliak on Karen's Quilt Circle, and we were talking about quilting in the Sub-Artic. She is from Yellowknife, that is far north in Canada, and there's some specific challenges that she has when you have summers full of daylight and winters without a lot of light. So thank you very much for showing up, everyone. It's been absolutely lovely having you here. And there's going to be no video this week. Unfortunately, things with Mando have just overwhelmed me, but I will be back next week. So if you need to get a hold of me, you know you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Just Get It Done Quilts. And of course, my website, sign up for my newsletter at justgetitdonequilts.com. So thank you, and I'll see you next time. Take care.